mobility work is all the rage in the gyms these days. You see people mobilizing, flexibilizing, like they're doing all these stretches, and a lot of it is pretty misguided, especially given the goals of some people. Like some people are trying to increase their mobility and increase their flexibility when their actual goals are counterintuitive to that. Say, for example, powerlifting. There's a lot of powerlifters that are mobilizing and looking to increase their flexibility, but their goal of strength is actually enhanced by being immobile. Like if you are just about able to hit depth in your squat, like the parallel position, anything below that is hard for you to hit, that is a good thing for your squat if you are a powerlifter. And it's not a good thing if you want to maximize your athleticism, if you want to maximize your health, like long-term health of your joints, if you want to actually maximize your strength through a full range of motion. Like the having mobile joints is going to help you. However, powerlifting is a sport. Powerlifting is a specific sport in that you only have to do 3 exercises, and 2 of those exercises, we could argue, benefit from you being tight. So the bench press, if it's really fucking hard for you to get into that bottom position of a bench press, that may actually benefit your strength in that exercise, because you're going to snap right out of that back up into the actual active range of motion of that exercise, because you are so tight. Like your muscles are essentially like an elastic band. They pull beyond their range of motion, so they have all this stored elastic energy, and they're just going to pop you straight back up. So being tight may be exactly what you need to progress in that exercise. Same with the squat. Being tight in and having an inability to get really deep into a squat, like below that parallel range, may be perfectly beneficial. It may actually be the most beneficial thing for your squat, because first of all, that's what external, like a squat suit does. That is what like a Mark Bell's slingshot does in the bench press. That it is creating external elastic energy to bring you back up. That's what your muscles are trying to do. So if your goal is powerlifting, do realize that all this mobility training you're doing may actually be detrimental to your goals. And this is, again, people try to fit a square peg into a round hole. Like their goals are counterintuitive to what they think their goals are, or sorry, their training methods are counterintuitive to what they say their goals are. And it's because they're trying to amalgamate a load of different things together in some sort of cohesive, coherent program, when that they're just trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. Like if you want to have the most mobile joints, you want to have the best strength that your musculature can actually achieve through a full range of motion, or the full range of motion that your joints are actually capable of producing, then powerlifting is not the sport for you. Like they don't have the Olympic high bar squat as part of their competition. No, they have like break parallel, I don't care where the bar is on your back squat. Like that's not conducive to a full, again, everyone always says full range of motion. I'm talking about a full range of motion in terms of your joints capacity for a full range of motion given that exercise. And for most people, that is probably going to be somewhere below parallel, but for some people, obviously, it is above parallel, unless they take this really wide stance, which again is what you see in powerlifting. People are trying to make their joints or their musculature find a range that is just the bare minimum range that they need to get for their sport, and being tight in that musculature, and your musculature actually helping you towards that goal by tightening up, is beneficial for your sport. It may not be beneficial for your health and your long-term strength goals, in terms of if you want to be able to squat when you're 90 or whatever. Like that may not be beneficial for that. But if you were telling your body that you want to be good at this parallel squat, this low bar parallel squat, and that's what your body is responding to, that stimulus that you're giving it, your body's responding to it by tightening up these areas, by making musculature and joints restricted in their movement because it benefits that exercise, and then you're spending a half hour, 40 minutes mobilizing joints, usually in really ineffective ways, by like foam rolling and stuff, like, which is not achieving the goal you think it is. That you have to, again, just think, are you actually trying to achieve the goals you're trying to achieve, or are you sending your body mixed signals? Like, you're telling it to tighten up because this is the range of motion we want to do, this is where we want to be in terms of an external validation of an exercise, in terms of you have specific rules for that exercise given by your organization. Your body's going to respond by tightening up, especially in the squat. Like, people are always like, I see them all the time, they're mobilizing their hips, mobilizing their knees, their ankles, and it's like, without mobilizing, you literally hit a parallel squat. That's your range, in terms of you hit that depth and everything feels really tight in that bottom position. And that's because you are strengthening that range. You get to that bottom position there, you strengthen to just there, maybe 5-10 degrees extra from that, and then you pop back up, and that is your squat training, that is your lower body training as a whole. Obviously, your body is going to respond to that stimulus and tighten up this musculature so that you are strong in that bottom position by having tight stored elastic energy through the muscles, So do realize that your goals dictate your mobility goals as well, and that being more mobile, if you are engaging in a sport, isn't necessarily a good thing. Like, there is that kind of stability around the joint that your body is trying to provide by being tight, that if you then mobilize and then you improve your flexibility and your mobility, you may get weaker as a result. And this is why you see, like, stretching and stuff before exercise potentially decreases your strength. And there are obviously a lot of like biochemical things that are going on in terms of like titin and actin and myosin and stuff, but what I'm talking about is that is still, again, a response to the stimulus you're giving. So if your goal is to be a powerlifter, or your goal is to perform a certain sport, and you are constantly finding yourself tight in certain musculature, or you are trying to be smarter than your body and mobilizing certain joints and stretching certain joints, do realize that may not actually be beneficial to your goals, or rather, they may not be beneficial to the goals that your training program is actually adapting your body to. Because again, a lot of people just get sucked into, strength is powerlifting, that's what strength is, when that's not really what strength is. But I can see how people do get sucked into that mentality that, like, this is how you express strength, it's the squat, bench, deadlift, and I don't care if it doesn't fit your joint structure, it doesn't fit your biomechanical structure, that's just what you're going to do. So I can see how that you do fall into that mentality, but do realize that there are trade-offs for being hyper specialized, and you are going to lose ranges in joints because that is what your body is responding to, because you were giving it a stimulus to get strong in a certain range, and being tight beyond that range is a good thing for being strong in that range. So do realize that a lot of the mobility work and a lot of mobility work that you see people doing isn't actually beneficial to their goals, and do realize that your goals are going to dictate where you get tight then as a result, and that may not be conducive to your actual goals, but you're just following a program that isn't actually tailored to your specific goals. So do have a little think about that when you were looking at people doing this mobility work, when you were doing mobility work yourself, and when you were actually designing your training program as a whole.